Welcome to our special podcast in celebration of Women in Engineering Day. We have some amazing conversations lined up with four very inspirational women who have conquered challenges in our industry in what is a very, very male dominated field. Join us as we delve to explore their journeys, their triumphs, their successes, and their struggles, and the determination that propelled them to succeed. So, without further ado, let's dive in. Welcome, Alina. If I could hand over to you, if you would be kind enough to do a bit of an introduction about yourself, your background, and how you came to sat here today.
Okay, so my name is Alina Sabanska. I'm an associate mechanical engineer with Red Engineering. I'm specializing in delivery of data center projects in Middle East. And I've been working in MENA region for about eight past years.
Amazing.
So
And
majority of my career has been here.
Yeah, and were you in the States before, the US for a while?
Yes.
Amazing.
I started my career there. Education was also US based. And then I came across
To the UAE. Amazing stuff. And what made you decide on engineering as a career?
What made me decide to be an engineer stems from being curious and interested in sciences, and having an aptitude for math definitely was a good start in the general direction of STEM. Even though lab coats looked cool, lab life seemed a bit boring to me. So engineering was the only option.
Yeah.
Being from the Eastern Bloc probably had a little to do with engineering too. Both of my parents have an engineering degree,
Oh,
and
wow.
engineers are actually highly regarded in the Soviet space. So, so yeah, that was easy to become one.
Amazing. And what is the perception of women in the MENA region compared with other countries in your experience? Especially now you've come from the US to the UAE or MENA region.
So yes, women are regarded highly in this society, but oftentimes it applies to women in more gender normative roles, right? So everybody has a soft spot for mothers and wives. That doesn't necessarily translate into business setup. The Middle East is slowly taking on many ideas that have been prevalent in the West, and then making them their own. We're starting to have the right conversations. Again, probably having these kind of interactions helps as well.
Yeah.
But also, I'm happy to see more and more women in managing position because typically women are the ones spearheading the inclusive initiatives, whether it's for gender or neurodiversity. Women typically are a little bit more interested to push it forward. Luckily for all, it can only get better from here. So I think we're on the right track.
Definitely. And the whole of that perception piece for me, a lot of my friends and ex-colleagues and stuff like that have always asked me what the perception is of women in the Middle East, because I think the press, especially back here, there's a completely different perception as to what the reality is over there, that they're surprised sometimes to hear that women are in leadership positions. So it's good to hear that that change is happening. It's already there, but there's obviously still a little way to go.
Absolutely.
And what's your vision for the future of women in engineering, and how do you believe we could achieve greater gender parity and inclusivity in the field?
My vision for the future of women in engineering is to have more of them in the field to begin with.
Yeah.
That's simple, right? Women leaders need to continue taking on the spotlight and leading by example. There's nothing more inspiring than being able to see yourself in the accomplishments of others, especially as a young engineer, right, or as a young professional. My drive to be a good engineer stemmed from my experience and mentorship by an amazing woman in my first job. So the knowledge and presence Joanne commented have been a great inspiration and behavior I wanted to mimic until it became natural to me.
Yeah.
So hiring more women in your offices will take a knockdown effect, right?
Definitely.
Because then younger women can see women in engineering offices and be like, oh, there's lots of women in this office. Interesting. It might be a rewarding career choice, or just raise their curiosity and have more women to be mentored by.
Definitely, that's such a big thing, isn't it? Having a role model, for want of a better word, people to look up to. As you, by the sounds of things, had in your earlier career, a lady that was in a leadership position that you can, as you say, mimic, and you can learn the behaviours and those sorts of things. I think that's something still that there are certain businesses, and I know Red specifically are incredibly passionate about that, promoting women internally in the business. But as a whole industry, from a building services MEP point of view, I think there's still a fair way to go, isn't there? From an engineering point of view, having leaders in those positions, not necessarily just within HR teams and stuff like that. It's bringing the women up through those ranks within the engineering disciplines. If you agree and feel that's fair to say.
It is. And also another thing is, like you said, right, the gap starts from a higher education level, right? My higher education experience it was me and another woman that graduated out of the class of 100.
Wow.
So I guess it's, but again, if women do not know that there is careers in engineering, that they cannot necessarily go and try it out. Given the coursework typically is way harder than day-to-day work as an engineer. And again, that's something I guess lots of people don't understand. When I have discussions with like fresh graduates, I tell them you'll be using about 5 to 10% of everything you learned.
Yeah.
It kind of ends up being a horror on their face. They're like, what do you mean? 90% of my time was wasted? But I guess that there is a disconnect between like how we present the higher education and what the work actually entails. So, and there's definitely opportunities to create apprenticeship programs, right? Without necessarily requiring degrees, having people come in as technicians or helpers, right? Where you can teach them on the job, because we seem to be so driven by wanting everybody to have an engineering degree.
Very much so, and yeah, as a recruiter, I can certainly testify to that. That a lot of the job descriptions we get genuinely do include that, of course, as one of the mandatory sort of things. So having that flexibility with hiring, and as you say, from an educational piece, in the schools and the unis. I remember before I got into building services recruitment many years ago, my perception was construction, and it made me think of cement and bricks in reality. But there's so much more to it, isn't there? And yeah, spreading that awareness at an earlier age potentially, I think could definitely help. Amazing.
Yeah, for sure.
And have gender biases or stereotypes affected your experience as a woman in the engineering field?
So gender biases and or stereotypes have affected my experience as a woman in the engineering field. I believe women are still met with pretty low glass ceilings. Some women get to break through them painfully and tiresome, but the world would be a better place if we didn't actually have glass ceilings in the first place. The only way to really remove them is to treat women as you would men. We put such a big emphasis on gender, marital status, and they are all important things to talk about and accommodate when needed. But the goals and paths to success should be clearly defined and shouldn't differ based on any of those circumstances. If we set up roadmap for success, it becomes easier for driven individuals of both genders to follow it and succeed. And I think that's the main thing, right? Because it seems like lots of women get discounted, right? Because it's like, oh, so she's going to have a baby and she's going to leave. Or why would I spend my time mentoring somebody? Again, if she's married, means she might start a family. Again, that shouldn't even be part of those kind of conversations, right? Give me the roadmap.
Definitely.
Show me how to get from A to B, and let me do it. And if I don't do it, then again, that becomes the joke on me. But unfortunately, that's not the case, right? And lots of times the treatment is a little bit different towards, for example, married men with kids, towards single women without partners and kids. It's like, oh, well, you can pick up slack. He needs to go to his family. Like we're all human, we all need space and time. So that's why marital status as well as gender actually plays a big role in lots of, let's say, office politics.
Mm. No, you're absolutely right. And I remember, I know I mentioned it off camera before we started this, but at DC World, if you don't mind me mentioning, I remember your talk was part of a panel discussion, and the thing that there was a lot of powerful discussion there, of course, but one real thing that resonated with me, and I hadn't really thought about at all before, was when you mentioned about men can be encouraged to be very outspoken and in the office to be quite direct, whereas if a lady is direct, there's a completely different perception of a woman being assertive. That was the word, sorry. Assertiveness in the office, a lady could be called a word with a B.
Of course, always.
And rude, and that is completely wrong. And that, I think I quoted you literally the next day in our company meeting, because there was a certain situation. Colleague was talking to a candidate, etc., and yeah, the perception of assertiveness was that she would be considered as being rude. And you mentioned in that panel discussion, as I say, that really hit a nerve, for want of a better word, within myself, and I've certainly mentioned that quite a few times in here. So yeah, stereotypes definitely not good. And speaking of which, that's one of the reasons why I think I passed that message on, is that how do you think men can become better allies and advocates for gender equality in engineering?
Men can become better allies and advocates for gender equality in engineering by following simple advice on the subject. Take the time and actually listen. So funny enough, like exactly what you mentioned, right? Why would women be really like forceful, right, and assertive in meetings? Part of it would come from a personality, right, for both men and women. But part of it would come from the fact that lots of times women are not listened to at all. So unless you come in a meeting, yell over everybody and pretty much try to make a stand, people just will steamroll you in the meeting and move on, right? Especially, again, the, let's say, more boisterous counterparts, which typically would be impersonated by men. So if we remove that obstacle, right, of being interrupted, of not being listened to, or not being able to deliver like your thought pattern, share your expertise, then it's going to be easier for women to maybe keep their softness, right? Because again, that's kind of what it comes down to. But our society actually empowers extroverts. So that's the people that we notice, right? If somebody's shy, no matter man or woman, typically we're going to look them over. Lots of times they get looked over for promotions as well.
Yeah.
Because they are really good at listening. They're better potentially at analyzing things versus just screaming any first thing that comes to their mind and wanting to hear the sound of their own voice. So yeah, just listen and create spaces where people feel comfortable sharing, whether it's their experience, whether there could be their technical expertise that gets overlooked too, just because people are not willing to listen.
Powerful stuff, and it's so simple as well, isn't it? In many ways, just listening. Yeah. And thank you so much. And final question: what advice would you give to anybody wanting to pursue a career in engineering?
I would say find a mentor, because potentially it could simplify the process. It can make things easier. Because again, we've all made mistakes on the path here, whether through, again, higher education or through job difficulties. Not every company is the same. Not every situation is the same. Not every project is the same. So again, having somebody who can guide you, who is interested in you succeeding, is very important. And again, when it comes to women in engineering are really willing to help, because we want to see more women working right alongside of us.
Amazing. Thank you very much. And as you know, we're actually, in the process, we've set up a community for women in MEP specifically, which I know you were very keen to be a part of as well. So thank you for that. And
Absolutely.
yeah, the aim for that is literally that, is to create that platform for there to be mentors and a safe space to be able to talk for, ask for advice and these sorts of things as well. So no, thank you so very much appreciated. And actually, one more question, last one, I promise. What do you know now that you wish you knew way back when you first studied or even thought about getting into engineering?
Probably the diversity of what engineering actually is, right? So I joined engineering because I wanted to build cars and rockets. And well, which seems like majority of mechanical engineers, that's the reason why we became mechanical engineers. But now I'm designing data centers. So on the flip side of that, right, I believe modern cars as well as rockets and just the modern way of life wouldn't really exist without the data centers now.
Yeah.
So in that respect, right, the impact of what I'm doing could be a little bit bigger than building a rocket. Again, it depends what your interest is, and at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. But after graduating college, I became part of the building services MEP. I have friends working in nuclear engineering. I have friends working in automotive. In finance. So the engineering degree just teaches you how to think, how to analyze, and how to understand the information at hand, right? So with an engineering degree, you can apply it anywhere, probably with less physics, which is not a bad thing. So, but the spread you get with possibilities for career with engineering degree is huge, and I believe lots of people don't know that.
Definitely. No, that's amazing. Thank you so very much. As we bring this episode to a close, we'd like to thank our 4 special guests, Mary, Bestan, Alina, and Sorsan. Thank you so much for sharing your inspiring stories and your experiences as women in engineering. I've personally really enjoyed a lot of the references, especially to the Middle East market, because of the perceptions that we have here back in the UK. You can see that there is some real true change which is starting to take place. There's still a lot to be done, but the most important point is that there is change and it is happening now. I hope their stories inspire you, and I hope that they inspire a new generation of women that are looking to pursue their dreams and leave an indelible mark on the engineering field as a whole. So once again, thank you so much to the 4 amazing ladies that contributed today, and who they continue to defy expectations and pave the way for a more inclusive and diverse future.